President Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping are set to meet virtually tomorrow. No details yet on the agenda of that meeting, but Mr. Duterte has said it was the Chinese leader who initiated the talks. It comes just as Manila condemned Beijing for yet another incident in Philippine waters. How will this meeting impact Philippine-China relations? Let's get the insights of Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy Associate Professor Eduardo Araral, live from California. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Mike.
Good morning. Good morning to you over there.
Morning, Mike.
Glad you could join us today, Professor. Now, let's begin with this. China called for the meeting in the wake of the Scarborough Shoal incident. Now, is this coincidental?
Probably not. I think what President Xi initiative is to probably say goodbye to President Duterte, to thank him for the friendship, and probably for President Duterte to also thank China. The Scarborough Shoal is probably not the main reason. The Scarborough Shoal is a very common irritant between Philippine and China relations. So that's probably not the reason why they will have this call. So it's probably more of a social call to, for both sides to give thanks and to bid farewell to each other.
Mm-hmm. Let's backtrack a bit, Professor. What has happened before this meeting? When was the last time the two leaders talked? A lot of things happened since then, and there were a lot of diplomatic protests filed by the Philippines. Now, should we do more than just filing diplomatic protests, and what can President Duterte do at this point?
Well, there's not much he can do. He will just have to, his technocrats, his people at the Department of Foreign Affairs will just have to do what they are tasked to do, which is to file protests. President Duterte's job as a political leader is to maintain the relationship on an even keel despite all these protests. This problem will not be solved even by the next administration, so we'll just have to take it at that. Even if the bottom line, Mai, is the Philippines will not give up its claim. China will not give up its claim. China has a long-term objective in the South China Sea. Philippines has its own objective. These two countries probably will not be able to resolve this immediately, but the immediate goal really is to maintain good relations and to keep the relationship from falling over.
Mm-hmm. Well, the president, Mr. Duterte, insists that he has no quarrel with the Chinese president, and they can freely talk about the long disputed Spratly Islands and fishing rights. And, you know, as you said, both sides will not give up their claim. But what about their personal relations? What do you think about that?
I think they have warm personal relations. You can see it in their body language. They met a few times. And I think for President Xi, he appreciates the fact that President Duterte has made friendly overtures. And I think for the Chinese, this matters a lot. So I think at the personal level, they are friendly to each other. But on a government-to-government, state-to-state relations, of course, DFA would have to file its complaints. That's probably the new normal now.
Mm-hmm. Well, one last question on this South China Sea dispute before we move on to other issues. What about the South China Sea Code of Conduct? Well, the Duterte administration is ending in less than 3 months.
It's unlikely that the code of conduct will be approved. China will take time. China has clear interest, which is to get the U.S. out of the South China Sea, and that's outside of the scope of Philippine diplomacy. So there's not much that will happen on the South China Sea Code of Conduct.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, looming over this meeting is the possible impact on the Philippines of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, the president, Mr. Duterte, reaffirmed his friendship with China, but he said, quote, "I just don't want a war to enter my country." Now, how is the war in Europe affecting Philippine-China relations?
Not much. it's too distant for us. The impact really is on the OFWs and the oil prices, food prices, but very little to do with diplomacy.
All right, one last question before I let you go, Professor. In terms of trade, infrastructure, and economic recovery from COVID-19, how are we seeing our relationship with China?
Well, I think the promises made in 2016, most of them are not yet delivered. We have two bridges and so on. But the potential for Philippine-China relations has not yet been maximized. And I think the next administration should do more to get out of this relationship with China.
Thank you for your insight. Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy Associate Professor Eduardo Araral, live from California.